Hey guys, today I'm going to tell you a Bible story about a man named Saul. Saul's story is in the book of Acts in the New Testament of the Bible. Now, the thing about Saul is this: he was not a very good man. He knew all about God, he knew all about the Bible, he was all about following the rules, but deep in his heart, he did not believe in Jesus. He did not believe that Jesus was who he said he was. In fact, Saul hated people who loved Jesus. He hated Christians. And in his life, the first part of his life, he went around hurting Christians, and sometimes he put them into prison. Sometimes he even killed them. So one day, Saul was on his way to a place called Damascus. He was actually going there to gather up Christians and hurt them. On the way, a bright light blinded him. It came out of nowhere. Not the kind of blinding like when you go out in the sun without your sunglasses, but I mean, he lost his sight. For 3 days, he couldn't see, and God sent a man named Ananias to go and help him. Ananias went to Saul and said, "Look, God is trying to get your attention." That bright light was him trying to help you see and know the love of Jesus. Well, in that moment, Saul got his sight back, and he realized that he had been sinning and hurting God's heart since he had been hurting God's people. God transformed, changed Saul into a new man for Jesus, and he even gave him a new name. So after that point, Saul became Paul. So when we talk about the rest of the story, his name is Paul. Now, Paul and some of his friends, this is his friend named Silas, went around telling everybody they could about Jesus, and the religious leaders didn't like it. So they put Paul and Silas in prison. But before they did, they hurt them, they beat them, and they spit on them. And so they went to prison. They were in a lot of pain. They had sores and their hearts were hurt. But in the middle of all that, while they were in prison, they were singing and praising God. And there were other prisoners in there. When all of a sudden one day, the ground started shaking and trembling, and the bars that were holding the prisoners in the prison cell bust open. Well, the religious leaders had put a jailer, a man in charge of making sure that the prisoners stayed in. He was so scared. He said, "Oh no, guys, you can't leave. Please don't run and leave." The bars were open. They could have all left. Well, Paul and Silas said, "We're not going anywhere." In fact, they started telling the jailer all about Jesus, and the jailer asked Jesus to come live in his heart. And then the jailer said, "Come to my house." He took Paul and Silas to his home. They shared Jesus with all of the jailer's family. All of his family asked Jesus to live in their heart. And the jailer and his family took care of Paul and Silas. They put medicine on their boo-boos, on their wounds. They fed them. Then the jailer took Paul and Silas back to the religious leaders, and the religious leaders the next day said, "Hey, you know what? You are free to go." So they were able to leave. When they left, do you think Paul stopped telling people about Jesus? Absolutely not. He told anybody who would listen. In fact, Paul got in trouble again by the religious leaders, and they threw him into prison. And then one day, the religious leaders came and the soldiers. They took Paul along with some other prisoners and put them on a big ship to take them to a faraway place. Well, while they were on this ship, Paul and these other prisoners, a huge storm came up. And these prisoners, they were very, very scared. But an angel of the Lord came to Paul and said, "Paul, you got to tell these people, I promise I'm going to take care of them. None of them will be hurt. They are all going to be safe." So even though they were scared, crying, probably seasick, and the waves were thrashing the ship back and forth, Paul said, "Hey, God is going to take care of us. I have a promise from the Lord," and God never goes back on his promises. Well, at one point, the ship ends up ramming into or hitting this huge pile of sand and rock that was kind of hidden under the water. The man who was steering the ship didn't see it coming. So the ship banged into this big sandbar thing that had rock all over it and just bust into pieces. Not a one person on that ship was hurt. And all of the people were amazed, and they were amazed at God. And so Paul was able in that moment to tell those people about Jesus in that terrible situation. And he was able to remind them, when God makes a promise, he is going to take care of us. Boys and girls, when you say yes to Jesus and you choose to follow him, it may not always be easy. Paul didn't have an easy life, but he chose to love and obey the Lord no matter what it cost. God always took care of him, and he'll do that for us too.